The Silurian Empire had been attacking for 2 years. They came like storms in the night, fast, cruel, and without mercy. They destroyed over a dozen planets, and every time they sent the same message: surrender or be erased. The galaxy watched. In fear, some races bowed quickly. Others tried to resist but were crushed. Planet after planet burned under Silurian weapons. They didn't care who lived there. Human or alien, old or young, they took everything. Orion 9 was a peaceful colony. It had schools, gardens, lakes, and families who had never seen war. They believed the Federation would protect them. They trusted that someone would stop the Silurians. But when the Silurian fleet arrived in orbit, no help came. They blocked all signals. They fired without warning. The sky turned red. Buildings fell. And people ran screaming into shelters. But it was useless. On board a ship far away, Captain Elena Brooks sat in her chair, watching the final broadcast from Orion 9. The screen showed fire, smoke, and a little girl crying in the arms of her mother. The signal cut, and there was only silence. Elena didn't say a word. She just stared at the black screen, her jaw tight, her eyes cold. She was the captain of the HSS Defiance, a secret warship built in the shadows. Most of the galaxy didn't even know it existed. Defiance wasn't complete. Its systems still needed testing. Its weapons were too new, too dangerous. The High Command called it a prototype, not a real ship yet. Elena had been ordered to stay hidden, to wait, to do nothing. But she couldn't just wait. She couldn't forget that child's face. Her crew was small, handpicked, and loyal. They had trained together for years. Lieutenant Chris Ryder was a brilliant tactician, young but sharp like a blade, always thinking 5 steps ahead. Dr. Tanya Wells was the heart of the ship, the lead engineer who had helped design Defiance from the start. She knew every wire, every system, every strange new weapon it carried. After the attack on Orion 9, the Federation gave a new order: abandon the Outer Rim. Let the Silurians take it. Regroup at the core worlds. Save what they could. But Elena didn't follow that order. Instead, she called her crew to the command room. She looked each of them in the eyes and said one thing: I'm not running. No one said anything for a long moment. Then Ryder nodded. Then we make them pay. They set a course for planet Syndra, the next target on the Silurian list. It was a farming world with 2 million settlers, mostly humans and a few peaceful alien species. Defenseless, vulnerable, easy prey, Defiance moved in silence, jumping through deep space channels that normal ships couldn't use. Its dark matter core made it invisible to most scanners. It didn't leave a trail. It didn't show up on maps. To the outside world, it had vanished. The crew worked day and night, preparing weapons, testing systems, making sure everything would hold during battle. Even though Defiance had never seen real combat before, they believed in the ship, and more importantly, they believed in each other. As they approached the edge of the Syndra system, Elena stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. She knew this was a suicide mission. She knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. But something inside her burned like fire, a voice that whispered, not this time. Because Orion 9 was already gone, and no one had stopped it. But not this time, not again. Not while she still had breath in her body. She looked at her crew one last time and gave a quiet order. Cloak the ship. Prepare for battle. The Silurians didn't know it yet, but their war was about to change forever. The HSS Defiance was not a normal ship. It was built in secret, deep inside an asteroid base called the Valhalla Shipyard. Only a few people in the galaxy even knew about it, and even fewer believed it could work. The ship was powered by a dark matter core, something no one had ever dared to use before. It was dangerous, unstable, but full of power, enough power to bend space, to move faster than light without leaving a trail, to make the ship invisible to enemy eyes. The outside of the ship was made of a new kind of human alloy. It was not shiny or smooth like other ships. Instead, it was rough and black, Designed to absorb enemy fire, not reflect it. Every time it was hit, the alloy changed a little. It remembered the damage and made itself stronger. Smarter, more resistant. It was like armor that learned how to survive. Inside the ship, everything was quiet and dark. There were no bright screens or loud alarms. Defiance didn't need noise. It needed focus. The crew moved like shadows, each one trained for this mission, each one ready to fight and die if needed. Elena Brooks stood in the command room, her hands behind her back, eyes on the star map. The ship's sensors had already picked up Zellurian movement. They were headed to planet Syndra, just like she thought. The Zellurians never stopped. Once they chose a target, they came like a storm, fast and full of fire. Lieutenant Chris Ryder was at the tactical station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls, placing traps, analyzing possible enemy routes, setting up electronic decoys to confuse Zellurian scanners. He was young but sharp, never panicked, even when things went wrong. They've got 30 ships. Ryder said quietly, but they're not expecting resistance. Elena nodded. They'll get resistance. In the engineering bay, Dr. Tanya Wells was working hard, her hands covered in grease and tiny burns. She was rerouting energy from the ship's secondary engines to boost the shields. She knew they would need every bit of power once the fight started. Her heart beat fast, but her hands stayed steady. This ship was her creation, her child, and she would not let it fall. She looked up at one of the security cameras and smiled. "You better hold together, girl," she whispered to the ship. "We're going into the fire." The crew had received another message from Central Command, the same as before, orders to stay away, to retreat, to regroup at the inner colonies. It was clear the Federation didn't want to risk the Defiance. Maybe they thought the ship would fail. Maybe they just didn't believe in one small crew against a whole empire. But Elena didn't care. She didn't respond to the order. She just deleted the message. Defiance had already entered slipspace, moving between stars faster than light. The galaxy outside turned into streams of color, then into darkness, then into fire again. The ship was quiet, smooth, like a predator moving through the night. As they neared Syndra, Elena called her crew to the central hall. There were only 25 of them, each one hand-picked, each one trained in both combat and engineering. They were not just soldiers, they were believers. "We are not here to win the war," Elena said, her voice calm but strong. "We are here to send a message. We are not running anymore." Ryder added, his eyes sharp. Dr. Wells stepped forward and said, "This ship was made for this moment. It's time to see what she can really do." Everyone nodded. Back in the command room, Elena stared at the growing Zellurian signal. It looked like a wall of death. 30 ships, large and armed with energy weapons, firebombs, and bio-drones. The Zellurians had destroyed dozens of worlds with fleets like this. But today, that wall would meet something different. Not a planet, not a base, not a retreating army, but a single human warship, the HSS Defiance. And Defiance was not built to run. It was built to stand and fight. The Zellurian fleet entered the Syndra system like they always did, calm, confident, and ready to destroy. 30 warships moved slowly in formation, their weapons already charged. They had done this many times before. Every time it was easy. Their scanners showed no signs of any military ships nearby. The planet's defense grid was weak. Just a few old satellites and one civilian space station. The Zellurian Admiral, Caloran, smiled inside his armored command chair. "They're not even trying to fight," he said, his voice cold. The Zellurian officers laughed. Their screens showed the planet below, full of green fields, homes, and small towns. They saw people running, preparing to hide, useless. The Admiral gave the order to begin the attack in 15 minutes. No rush, it would be over quickly. But then something strange happened. On one of the long-range scanners, a small blip appeared. Just for a second, then it vanished. Probably a mining drone. One officer said, not worried. But a few seconds later, the blip came back, again for a second, then disappeared, this time. The Admiral frowned. "Zoom in," he ordered. The screen showed nothing, just stars and space. But then, without warning, one of the Zellurian cruisers exploded. A giant ball of fire lit up the darkness, and metal pieces flew across the fleet. Alarms started blaring on every ship. What was that? Someone shouted. No one had an answer. On board the HSS Defiance, Captain Elena Brooks stood calm on the bridge. She had fired a high-speed stealth torpedo, designed by Dr. Tanya Wells. It could travel undetected and hit before scanners even noticed it. "One shot, one kill. That was your warning," Elena said softly into the comms, her voice steady. "You've taken planet after planet, but not this time." The message went out to the entire Zellurian fleet. Open frequency, no encryption. Every soldier and officer heard it. The voice of a human captain, not begging, not afraid, but challenging them. Admiral Calloran's eyes went wide with rage. "Find that ship and destroy it," he roared. The fleet scanners activated full sweep mode, looking for any sign of the attacker. But the HSS Defiance had already moved, hidden again in the shadows of space. Her dark matter drive made her disappear between pulses of reality. She was like a ghost, here one moment, gone the next. The Zellurians fired into the darkness, wasting shots, panicking. They were not used to this. They always attacked, never defended. But now they were under attack. And they didn't know from where. Suddenly, 2 more Zellurian ships exploded at the same time, one from a railgun blast, the other from a mine that had been dropped silently. Just minutes before, screams filled the enemy comms. Confusion spread through the fleet like a virus. Inside Defiance, Lieutenant Chris Ryder smiled. "They're falling for every trick," he said, tracking enemy movements and leading them straight into traps. They don't know how to fight something they can't see. Dr. Tanya Wells stood at her station, keeping the ship's systems stable. The power core hummed like a heartbeat, strong and alive. The hull glowed faintly with absorbed energy. Each hit from enemy fire just made Defiance stronger. "Captain." Elena gave short, clear commands, her face calm, her eyes sharp. She didn't celebrate the kills, she didn't shout or cheer. She just focused, one target at a time. Keep moving, hit hard, disappear, hit again. Admiral Calloran's fleet started to break formation, their tight circle falling apart. They tried to group together, but each move they made was met with sudden attacks, precision strikes that came from nowhere. "This isn't a ship," one Zellurian officer whispered in fear. "This is a monster." But it was a ship, a human ship. And it was just getting started. In less than 20 minutes, 7 Zellurian vessels were gone, 3 more were damaged, and the rest were too busy dodging and running to attack the planet. The people of Syndra looked up at the sky. They saw flashes of light, burning stars falling from above. They didn't know what was happening, but for the first time they had hope. Someone was fighting back. One ship, one warship, Defiance. The HSS Defiance moved like nothing the Zellurians had ever seen before. Their ships were used to enemies that ran or died quickly. But Defiance didn't run, and it didn't die. It danced through space, through enemy fire, through explosions. Like a shadow made of steel and flame, Captain Elena Brooks stood on the bridge, her voice calm, giving commands with no panic, no fear. She trusted her crew. And she trusted the ship. Every move was sharp, every shot perfect. Lieutenant Chris Ryder's fingers flew across the tactical console, launching decoys, fake sensor signals, and timed attacks. "Target Cruiser 7. Elena said. "Locked," Ryder replied, with a soft hum. Defiance's railgun fired. Shot broke through the enemy's shield like it wasn't there, hit the engine core, and the cruiser exploded from within. No warning, no time to escape. "They're scattering," Ryder said. "They don't know where to go." Dr. Tanya Wells watched energy levels closely in the engineering bay. The ship was taking hits now, small ones, but enough to test the armor. Every time a Zellurian beam struck the hull, the living alloy absorbed it, changed its shape, remembered the pattern, and made itself stronger. It was like the ship was learning how to survive with every shot it took. "She's adapting fast," Tanya whispered. Come on, girl, show them what you're made of. The Zilurians tried to regroup, forming tighter formations, protecting their command ship. But that only made it easier for Defiance. The tighter they flew, the easier it was to strike. Ryder launched one torpedo. It split into 100 smaller drones, each one carrying a tiny explosive. They flew like a swarm of bees, surrounding a Zilurian destroyer, then detonating all at once. Boom! The destroyer broke in half, fire spilling from its engines on the Zilurian bridge. Admiral Caloran slammed his fist against his console. Why can't we hit it? He shouted. It's just one ship. But it wasn't just one ship. It was Defiance. And Defiance was built for war, not big battles with thousands of ships, but small ones, precise ones, where one good shot meant everything. Defiance didn't. Fire nonstop, it picked its targets carefully, moved fast, and then disappeared again, like a hunter in the forest, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sometimes it didn't even use weapons. It flew into gas clouds and let the Zilurians follow. Then it dropped mines that exploded from pressure, tearing apart 2 enemy frigates that had followed too close. Other times it used sound. Tanya created sound pulses that tricked Zilurian scanners, making them believe Defiance was somewhere it wasn't. When they turned to fire, the real Defiance would hit from the side or behind. After 23 minutes of battle, 15 Zilurian ships were gone. The rest damaged or fleeing. The retreating, Ryder said, smiling. No, Elena replied. They're falling back to regroup. They'll call reinforcements. She was right. The Zilurians never gave up so easily. They were proud, brutal, and angry now. They would return. And next time, they would bring more ships. But Elena didn't care about tomorrow, today. She had saved a planet, today. She had shown the galaxy that humanity wasn't weak, that even one ship with one crew could fight back. The people on Syndra watched from the ground, staring up at the sky. They saw the wreckage falling, the fires dying out, and they whispered to each other. A human ship saved us. A warship with no name, one farmer said. No, another whispered. It had a name, Defiance, above them, in the quiet of space. The HSS Defiance floated slowly past the wreckage of an enemy fleet. But she was not done yet, not even close. Far away from the battlefield, in the shadows of another star system, a message was sent. It was short, hidden in code, and went straight to the Zilurian command center. It didn't come from an enemy, it came from an ally, the Ventari, a race that once traded with humans, but now feared them. The Ventari had been watching the battle from a distance. They had seen what the HSS Defiance could do, and it scared them. They didn't want the Zilurian Empire to win. But they also didn't want humans becoming too powerful. They believed that Defiance was dangerous, a weapon that could shake the balance of power in the galaxy. So they made a deal. They sent the Zilurians a detailed scan of Defiance's last battle, including weak points in its hull, energy cycles, and shield recharge patterns. It was a betrayal, quiet and cold, done with one message, one file back near planet Syndra. Elena and her crew were scanning the remaining debris, looking for survivors and collecting data. The mood on the ship was calm but tense. They had won the first round, but they knew it wasn't over. We've got movement, Ryder said from tactical. Long-range sensors picking up a second wave, bigger this time. How big? Elena asked. Ryder's eyes widened as he read the numbers. 50 ships at least, and they're coming fast. Elena didn't flinch. Prepare for another run, she said, in engineering. Dr. Tanya Wells was already working hard, redirecting power from backup systems to recharge the weapons. She noticed something strange. A fluctuation in the shield pattern. A delay that wasn't there before. We've got a glitch, she said into the comms. The shield's not syncing like it should. Can you fix it? Elena asked. I'll try, Tanya replied, grabbing her tools and running into the lower deck. Meanwhile, Defiance moved slowly toward the edge of the system, preparing to meet the enemy head-on again. But this time, something was different. The Zalurians were moving smarter, faster, like they knew what to expect. Like they had studied the ship's every move. Defiance launched a set of decoy drones, but the enemy ships ignored them, going straight for Defiance's port side, the one area Tanya hadn't finished reinforcing yet. The first hit came hard, shaking the whole ship. Sparks flew inside the command room, alarms lit up. "They hit our port drive," Ryder said. "Engines are losing power." Tanya's voice came through the comms, breathless. "They knew where to hit us. This wasn't random." Elena clenched her jaw. "Someone gave them our data." The realization was heavy. Not only were they outnumbered, but now the enemy knew their weak spots. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was survival. Inside the ship, damage control teams rushed to seal the damaged sections. One engine was gone. The shield was weaker on the left side, and they were taking hits every few seconds. But the crew didn't panic. Tanya didn't stop. She ran straight into the reactor chamber, where the heat was so strong it melted metal. She removed her gloves and started rerouting the ship's power. Manually, her hands burned, her skin blistered, but she didn't stop, not for 1 second. "I'm taking energy from life support and weapons," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm giving it all to the railgun. That'll drain the whole ship," Elena warned. "It's our only shot," Tanya said. "If we don't stop that command ship now, we're dead." Elena didn't argue. "Fire when ready," she said. Tanya hit the final switch, and the railgun charged, glowing bright white, hotter than anything on the ship had ever been. "Target locked," Ryder said. "Fire," Elena said. The railgun released a single shot. But it wasn't just metal. It was heat, power, rage, and pain. Everything the crew had felt in the last hour. The shot tore through space like a lightning bolt, hit the Zalurian command ship in the center, and split it in half. The explosion lit up the sky. The remaining Zalurian ships pulled back in shock. Inside Defiance, everything went dark. The lights flickered, the engines shut down, and smoke filled the hallway, but they were alive. Tanya collapsed in the hallway. Her arms burned, her breathing shallow. Ryder rushed to help her, carrying her to the med bay. Elena looked around the damaged bridge, hearing only silence now, broken systems, and the hum of backup power returning. They had survived the second wave, but only just inside the HSS Defiance. Silence filled every corner. Only the sound of flickering lights and broken machines could be heard. The ship was badly hurt. One engine was destroyed. Shields were barely holding. Many systems were offline, and smoke hung in the air like fog. But Captain Elena Brooks was still standing, her hand gripping the rail beside her command chair. Blood ran down the side of her face, but her eyes were sharp, alive, and full of fire. They had survived the second wave, but just barely. The railgun shot had destroyed the Zalurian command ship, and with their leader gone, the rest of the enemy fleet had backed away for now. Lieutenant Chris Ryder helped carry Dr. Tanya Wells to the med bay. Her hands were burned, her skin red and blistered. She had risked her life to power the railgun. And now she lay unconscious, breathing slowly. The medical bots did their best to heal her. "But it would take time. She saved us," Ryder whispered, looking down at her in the bridge. Elena checked the sensors. The Zalurian ships were still out there, regrouping, not running this time. They were angry, and more would come. She knew it. They all knew it. "We're not done yet," Elena said softly. "They're coming again." The crew looked tired, some injured, some scared. But none of them walked away. Each one returned to their stations, ready to fight again, if they had to. Defiance wasn't moving anymore. Her engines were down, and the gravity stabilizers were flickering. Sometimes the crew floated for a second before gravity returned. The ship felt like it was breathing, weak and heavy, like a wounded beast refusing to fall. Elena turned to Ryder. "How many enemy ships left?" 18, he replied. "But more are on the way. Long-range scan shows another fleet coming in a few hours, maybe more than 50. Elena nodded. She didn't smile. She didn't frown, she just accepted it. She knew the mission was never about winning the war. It was about stopping them, even just for one day, one planet, one moment. What do we have left? She asked. 1 railgun shot, 3 torpedoes, and short-range cannons, Ryder said. Shields are down to 15%, engines are offline, and life support is running on backup. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and half dead. But they were still here. Then we use everything, Elena said. We make this ship a weapon, even if it breaks her. She gave orders quickly, clear and simple. They would reroute all remaining power into defense traps. They would use the ship's core heat to create a radiation field that would confuse enemy scanners. They would hide mines in the floating debris, turn the battlefield into a trap. Even broken, Defiance would fight. While the crew worked, Elena went down to engineering. She walked past damaged walls, torn wires, and smoke. She saw her crew working with bleeding hands and tired eyes. But no one stopped, no one complained. When she entered the medbay, she stood beside Tanya's bed. The doctor was still unconscious, her face pale, her hands wrapped in thick bandages. Elena looked at her for a long time, then whispered, "You kept this ship alive. Now we'll return the favor." Outside the ship, Zalurian scouts came closer, testing the field, looking for weak spots. Defiance didn't fire, not yet. She waited like a hunter, silent in the dark. Then, one by one, the enemy ship started to enter the trap zone. Ryder gave the signal, and Defiance came alive. Gravity mines activated, pulling Zalurian ships into twisted paths. 2 cruisers crashed into each other. Another hit a radiation burst and lost control. Explosions filled the space around them. Defiance fired her last railgun shot, and another command vessel was destroyed. A wave of fear moved through the Zalurian fleet. "They're falling back again," Ryder said. They didn't expect that. Elena didn't celebrate. She looked at the timer, 2 hours left before the 3rd Zalurian fleet arrived, the biggest one yet. But she had done what she came to do. Planet Sinra was still safe. Because of one ship, because of Defiance, and Defiance still breathed, just barely, but enough to fight again. The Zalurians were not finished yet. They had failed twice. And now they were angry. They were not just trying to win. They wanted revenge. They wanted to crush the human warship that had made them look weak. Their 3rd fleet arrived at the edge of the Syndra system, over 50 ships, all fully armed and ready for destruction. Inside the HSS Defiance, Captain Elena Brooks looked at the sensor screen. The enemy fleet was huge, stretching across the stars like a wall of death. The ship was still damaged. 1 engine was gone. The shield was barely working, and most of the weapons were offline. They had no way to escape, no way to win in a normal fight. But Elena didn't plan to fight in a normal way. She stood in the middle of the command room, her voice steady. "We can't run, and we can't fight them all head on, but we can trap them." Lieutenant Chris Ryder looked up, confused. "How?" Elena walked to the display and pointed to a place near the planet. "This area is full of broken gravity fields from past battles, and unstable stardust. We can pull them in, make them fight us in a place where their numbers don't matter." "Trap field," Ryder said, his eyes lighting up, like dancing through a minefield. Elena nodded. "Exactly, but we need to act fast." The crew jumped into action, even though they were tired and injured. They followed orders without question. Dr. Tanya Wells was still unconscious in the medbay, but her systems were still working, and her earlier changes to the ship's core helped speed up the plan. Defiance moved slowly into the trap zone, using the last bit of power to adjust position. Then they dropped graviton mines across the field, hidden inside the floating debris from the first battles. They powered up the radiation mist, which made enemy scanners useless. The Zalurian fleet started moving in. They expected another easy kill. Just a damaged ship standing in their way. They didn't know what they were walking into. As the first wave entered the trap zone, the mines exploded, tearing through enemy cruisers and battleships. Some were pulled into gravity wells and crashed. into asteroids. Others were forced to break formation, making them easier targets. Defiance didn't shoot much. They didn't have many weapons left, but each shot counted. One cannon blast hit a carrier right in the fuel core, making it explode. Into a giant fireball, another torpedo struck a ship's engine, spinning it out of control into a gravity storm. Inside Defiance, the crew felt every impact. The ship shook again and again, parts broke off, lights flickered, but they kept going. Ryder yelled over the noise, "We've taken out 12 ships already." "Keep them dancing," Elena shouted. "Don't let them regroup." Outside, Zellurian ships tried to escape the trap field, but every path was blocked. Every turn led to another mine or a radiation cloud. Their sensors couldn't see clearly, and they started shooting wildly. Some even hit their own allies by mistake. The battlefield became chaos. Defiance flew low and fast through the field, weaving between falling ships and burning wreckage, their engines barely alive, but still pushing forward. But the price was high. Another hit struck the rear of the ship, causing a fire to break out in the engine bay. A young crew member was lost. Trying to put it out, another was injured when a wall exploded from pressure. Elena saw the damage reports coming in one by one, her heart heavy, but her voice strong. "Hold together, we're almost there." The Zellurian second command ship tried to push through the trap field to reach Defiance, but Ryder had one torpedo left. He aimed carefully and fired. It hit perfectly. The command ship spun out and crashed into two of its own escorts. A chain reaction of explosions followed. For a moment, space was filled with fire. The remaining Zellurian ships started to pull back, not because they were ordered to, but because they were afraid. For the first time in years, the Zellurians were retreating. They had thrown everything at one ship and lost. Inside Defiance, the lights were dim. The engines were gone. Systems barely worked, but the crew was still alive, bruised, bleeding, and exhausted. Elena sat in her chair, breathing slowly. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. Ryder looked at the screen. "They're running, Captain. It's over." She didn't smile. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "Good." Because now, the galaxy would know humans weren't weak. And Defiance was more than just a ship. It was a message, shouted through fire and silence. Not this time. The battlefield was quiet now. Only broken ships and floating wreckage filled the sky above planet Syndra. The Zellurian fleet had retreated, their proud warships now burning or gone, and only one human warship remained in the center of it all, the HSS Defiance. Defiance was barely holding together. Her engines were gone. The outer hull was cracked in many places. Lights flickered weakly, and systems failed one by one. Smoke rose from several parts of the ship, and fires had to be put out with buckets because the sprinklers were offline. But the crew was alive inside. The medbay. Dr. Tanya Wells opened her eyes slowly. She winced in pain as she moved her burned hands. But when she looked around and saw the medical bots still working, she smiled weakly. She had survived, and so had the ship. Lieutenant Chris Ryder sat near her bed, his left hand wrapped in bandages, burned from the last torpedo launch. When he saw Tanya awake, he smiled and leaned forward. "You did it, you crazy genius. We're still here." She smiled back, tired but proud. "What about the captain?" she asked softly. "Still on the bridge," Ryder replied. "She hasn't left since the battle ended." Up on the command deck, Captain Elena Brooke sat alone. The screens around her were dark, the main display cracked, but one small screen still showed the stars. Peaceful now, no enemy signals, no alarms, just space. Her uniform was torn, her arm wrapped in cloth from a quick field patch, but her eyes were still sharp, still watching, still waiting. Because until help came, she was not going to relax. But finally, after 4 long days, help arrived. A Federation rescue fleet jumped into the system, their sensors scanning the wreckage, shocked by what they saw. Over 50 Zellurian ships destroyed or disabled. And in the center of it all, a single human warship, silent but standing. Rescue teams docked with Defiance. Medics rushed in. helping the wounded, fixing systems, bringing fresh supplies and power. The crew of Defiance didn't cheer or shout. They were too tired for that, but there were quiet smiles, soft tears, and long hugs. Elena finally stood from her chair and met the rescue commander face to face. "We thought you were lost," he said, his voice full of disbelief. "We were." "Close," Elena replied. Her voice quiet, but not close enough. News of what had happened spread fast across the galaxy. Recordings from the battle, intercepted Zellurian transmissions, and survivor interviews were shared everywhere. People from many planets watched in silence as they learned the story. One ship had faced 3 enemy fleets. One ship had saved a planet that everyone else had given up on, and that ship was human. Some called it madness. Others called it bravery. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Zellurian Empire had been stopped. Not by a giant fleet, not by thousands of ships, but by one warship with a crew who refused to back down. The Federation changed its plans. No longer would they retreat. From the outer rim, they sent reinforcements, built new defenses, and asked Captain Elena Brooks to lead the new command for Outer Rim defense. She refused medals and speeches, but she accepted the duty. The HSS Defiance was brought back to the Valhalla shipyards. For repairs, it would take months to fix her, maybe even rebuild parts of her from scratch. But the crew agreed on one thing. They didn't want a new ship, they wanted Defiance. Because Defiance wasn't just metal and weapons, she was family. She was proof that one ship can make a difference. That even when everyone says to run, even when the enemy is stronger, there is power in saying one simple word, "No, not this time," and the Zellurian Empire, once feared across the stars, would never forget the name of the ship that made them run, Defiance.